If you are looking to get a second passport in 2026 as your hedge, as your plan B, there are countries that will grant you citizenship by investment or by donation that will sell you a passport. Unlike most Western countries that want to tax you, confiscate your wealth, and restrict your freedom, these countries are willing to grant you full citizenship in exchange for your economic contributions. So if you're a high net worth individual who's looking to get a second passport as a hedge, as a plan B, in this video we will explore all the options available for you, your family, and your future generations to build a well-diversified passport portfolio. The first country, and one of my personal favorites, is El Salvador. El Salvador launched their Freedom Passport program in December 2023, and it is the fastest citizenship program available, allowing you and your family to get full citizenship and a second passport in as little as 8 weeks. El Salvador requires a donation of $1 million in Bitcoin or USDT made directly to the government after you get approved. And this is the good thing about most of these citizenship by investment, citizenship by donation programs, is that you only make the economic contribution, that's basically 80-90% of the total cost, once you have been officially approved by the government. So in the case of El Salvador, you are only paying the $1 million after you have been approved, and you are getting one of the strongest passports that you can get on the market, with visa-free access to the Schengen area, with visa-free access to many interesting destinations all around the world, and you can include your spouse and your children under 18 years old. El Salvador doesn't require you to spend any time there. There are no visit, no presence requirements. You can do this program entirely online, and you can get citizenship for your full family for $1 million. So let's say you have a spouse and 2 minor children, you would only have to make the $1 million donation once for your family of 4. There are other cheaper programs that we will discuss later in the video, but if you are interested in the fastest program that gives you a strong passport from a country that will protect your freedom and your rights, then El Salvador might be the right fit. Also, this is one of the most flexible programs when it comes to nationality restrictions. So if you are from Russia or Belarus, it is one of the few countries that will allow you to apply. We have a full video talking about El Salvador Freedom Passport, but it has become one of the most popular programs for ultra high net worth individuals, Bitcoin investors, not only because it stands for economic freedom, it became the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, but also it is now one of the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere, making it not only a good option for your Plan B passport, but also a good option for your Plan B residency, a home country that you can use as a backup in case of political or social instability in your home country. Next, we have Caribbean citizenship by investment programs. The 5 Caribbean countries that popularized citizenship by investment programs that you might have heard about, and that became quite popular because they have visa-free access to the Schengen area, allowing you to travel more freely, especially if you currently hold a passport that limits your travel freedom and your mobility. St. Kitts and Nevis was the first country to launch a modern citizenship by investment program in 1984, and it is not only the longest running program, but it also has probably the best reputation in the region. A passport from St. Kitts and Nevis allows you to travel visa-free to over 150 destinations, but more important than the number is the destination. So you can travel visa-free to Hong Kong, Singapore, Russia, and most importantly for many people, the Schengen area. Precisely because of this reason, because of the access to the EU and the Schengen area, the Caribbean citizenship by investment programs raised the minimum contribution required from $100,000 to $200,000 in 2024. So now St. Kitts and Nevis requires a minimum donation of $250,000 for you to get citizenship. The process is much more complex than in other countries, like for example El Salvador, requiring your birth certificate, police records, extensive proof of funds and source of wealth, and the timeline is also longer. The government promises 3 to 4 months of government due diligence, government processing time, but what we are seeing right now at CitizenX is that although St. Kitts is probably the fastest country in the Caribbean region to approve citizenship by investment applications, it's still taking roughly 6 months to get approved. As of today, there are still no presence requirements, no visit requirements to get St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship by investment, but the authorities have already announced that a presence requirement will be introduced in 2026. So if you are considering this program, it might be a good moment to apply before they introduce the presence requirements that might be more or less extensive. Some people are saying 30 days. It is unclear whether they will be required before getting citizenship or after getting citizenship, but what is clear is that this program will only become more and more difficult as the country faces pressure from the EU. Another popular option in the Caribbean is Antigua and Barbuda, that requires a donation of $230,000 and grants you visa-free access to China, which St. Kitts doesn't. Also, Antigua is much more crypto-friendly, probably the most crypto-friendly country in the Caribbean, but because of the huge backlog and the huge amount of applications that the country received in 2024 before increasing the prices, right now we are looking at around 12 to 14 months of government processing time, making it one of the slowest programs in the region. All of these Caribbean countries, they're quite tax-friendly, but in order to get those 0% taxes almost all across the board, you would need to relocate, to move to one of these countries and live full-time there, generally. So that means that you should also evaluate whether you would see yourself living in one of these countries. I have personally visited all of them, and honestly, Antigua and Barbuda is probably one of the most developed ones. The islands are also bigger than others like St. Kitts. The airport is one of the best in the region. It was built with some funds from the Citizenship by Investment program, and it has some of the best infrastructure across these countries. Antigua and Barbuda is currently the only country in the Caribbean with presence requirements, making you visit for at least 5 days during the first 5 years after you get citizenship. This means that you will get full citizenship and your passports, but they will have an expiration date of 5 years, during which you need to visit Antigua and Barbuda for at least 5 days before renewing your passport. Then you will renew it and it will have the regular expiration date of 10 years with no ongoing presence requirements. Next, we have Grenada, that will grant you citizenship in exchange for a $235,000 contribution. Similarly to Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada also has visa-free access to China, but what's really special about Grenada is that it also has an E2 visa treaty with the US, meaning that if you live for at least 3 years full-time in Grenada, after getting citizenship, you could apply for an E2 investor visa in the US. And this country is the only one that offers something like this in the Caribbean region. Since the ground invasion by the US, Grenada receives this sort of special treatment, which makes it probably one of the best options if you are looking for an option that allows you to bridge the West and the East, the US and China. Grenada is also one of the fastest programs in the Caribbean, currently taking around 6 to 7 months of government due diligence, but the process is probably the most complex, making it quite bureaucratic and rather difficult if you are a crypto investor. Also, it is not the most privacy-friendly country, as they publish online the names of everyone who gets citizenship by investment every year. So I would only choose Grenada if getting an E2 investor treaty to the US is very important and you're willing to live at least 3 years there, or if getting visa-free access to China is also important for you, although you could get it with other options like Antigua and Barbuda that might take a bit more time, or Dominica. Dominica is the most flexible Caribbean citizenship by investment program, and for that reason it also doesn't have the best reputation. The reputation of Dominica is not as good as St. Kitts, as Antigua, or as Grenada. The minimum donation is $250,000 and the government is taking around 6 months to approve applications, so it is not as fast as it used to be. The program is not as flexible as it used to be either, and it recently lost visa-free access to the UK, which ties into the reputational concerns that should make you think about whether it's worth it if you are going for a Caribbean passport to go with Dominica. Dominica still has visa-free access to China, so if this is important for you and you don't want to go through a more complex process like the one in Grenada and you don't want to wait for longer in Antigua, then Dominica might be a good option for you, although I would say it's a niche case. And finally, we have St. Lucia that requires a minimum donation of $240,000 and takes around 18 months in processing time. This is because St. Lucia was probably the most popular option back in 2021, 2022, and for that reason they have a huge number of applications that they have not been able to process, causing delays, and that's why right now it's the slowest program in the region. This passport also comes with some reputational concerns, even if it also has visa-free access to the Schengen area, as St. Lucia recently lost visa-free access to the UK. Something unique about this program is that it offers a qualifying investment of $300,000 in government bonds that might be a better fit for some people that don't want to make the donation, and it's the only program in the Caribbean that offers such a type of investment. All of these 5 Caribbean countries, they will also grant you citizenship in exchange of a real estate investment instead of a donation. However, the amount required for the real estate investment is generally around 2 times higher than the one required for the donation, and it's only government approved real estate that you can invest in. This means that all the real estate projects, they are quite overpriced compared to the open market, and tied to the fact that you cannot resell the real estate until a certain number of years. 5 in Grenada, 7 in St. Kitts, makes it quite risky because you might end up losing more money than simply going with a donation that is cleaner, more straightforward, and you know exactly how much it costs. That's why most people decide to go with the donation route in the Caribbean. This is not the case in all the countries. There are other countries like Turkey that allow you to invest in real estate in the open market. Turkey will grant you citizenship and a passport for you and for your family in exchange for a $400,000 minimum investment in real estate. So if you are looking to invest in real estate, Turkey might be a good fit. They also have more investment options like investment funds, bank deposits, although they recently changed the bank deposit to Turkish lira, and with the inflation it might be a bit more risky. And also you have to evaluate whether Turkey is the right second passport for you. This is because Turkey is a major geopolitical power. It's not a small, neutral island country, so this comes with some advantages and with some disadvantages. On the positive side of things, Turkey has some of the best consular support around the world, on par with countries like the US and China, but as a disadvantage, it is a major geopolitical power with mandatory military service for males in military age. Not meaning that you will do it, but your children, grandchildren, they might need to do it in the future. So it's a hidden risk that the program has. Another positive thing is that it's a bigger country with more citizens, so the passport is not quickly identified as a citizenship by investment passport, as it might be the case with Caribbean citizenship by investment programs. But on the other side, it is also not as tax friendly. Turkey has global taxes on inheritances for Turkish citizens, meaning that you will have to pay taxes to Turkey on your global inheritances, no matter if you live or not in Turkey. Although Turkey doesn't have the capabilities to enforce this tax globally as the US does with FATCA, for example, it is not often talked about as a disadvantage of this program, and people think that only the US and Eritrea have citizenship-based taxation. We will talk about this on another video. There are many countries with citizenship-based taxation or some form of global taxation, and Turkey is one of them. Turkey currently takes around 8 months to approve you. It is a bit more of a complex process as it is not unified on a single citizenship by investment unit, but it's fragmented across different government entities, tax offices and whatnot, and you can include your entire family, your spouse and your children under 18 years old. The Turkish passport is not the strongest, it doesn't have visa-free access to the Schengen area, but if you already have a strong passport, this might not be so important for you, and you can consider other options of cheaper passports that are not so strong from a pure number of visa-free destinations, but that might be a better value for you and your family. São Tomé and Príncipe is currently one of the most popular programs for Westerners because it's the cheapest citizenship by investment program with a minimum donation of $90,000 plus $5,000 in government fees, and it is also one of the fastest programs with a total processing time of around 10 weeks from the moment you submit your application. The application process is quite simple and straightforward, has no nonsense like Caribbean citizenship by investment programs, and it also allows you to include your parents, spouse, and children as part of your application, meaning that you can get Plan B, a hedge, for the entire family. São Tomé is also part of the CPLP, the community of Portuguese language-speaking countries, meaning you get some benefits in countries like Angola, Brazil, or Portugal, with fast-track naturalization in 7 years instead of 10 in Portugal, or in 1 year instead of 4 years of permanent residency in Brazil. This doesn't mean that you will use this benefit, but maybe your children, grandchildren who will inherit this passport, they will use it. And this is something really important because Africa is growing as a region, the economy is growing, so having an African passport from a country that is not part of continental Africa, as a dual island nation in the west coast of Africa, might be interesting, might be a good investment for the future. São Tomé, being a passport from the global south and not having access to the Schengen area, doesn't need to comply with all the requests from the EU bureaucrats, meaning that if you are from Russia or Belarus, you can still apply. In this price range, there are other options in Africa, like Sierra Leone, although they are not so popular just because Sierra Leone is a passport that comes with some liabilities that might come with enhanced due diligence, especially if you are dealing with financial institutions, bank accounts in the West. Like São Tomé, the process for Sierra Leone is fully remote. You can get the passport completely online. There are no visits, no presence requirements, and Sierra Leone has one special benefit, that is that it allows for name changes as part of the citizenship by investment process, which can be a good privacy-enhancing feature. Another option in the South Pacific is Vanuatu, which used to be quite popular up until São Tomé was launched because it used to be the cheapest program at $130,000 of minimum contribution. Vanuatu also used to be one of the most flexible programs, and this is why it doesn't have the best reputation and it lost visa-free access to the UK and the Schengen area. Also, as they transitioned to biometric passports, they now require a visit to an embassy in Dubai, Hong Kong, or in Vanuatu in order to get your passport issued, making the process not entirely remotely and making it a bit more difficult for applicants. Still, it's a good option in this price range, especially if you want to avoid getting an African passport with São Tomé, and it's probably superior to the other program in the South Pacific, which is Nauru. Nauru also launched their program last year. It's one of the newest programs, and because it didn't have much success, because the process was more difficult, it was slower than Vanuatu. Instead of taking 3 to 4 months like in Vanuatu, it was taking 8 to 9 months, and the process was more similar, more demanding to Caribbean programs. Precisely for this reason, Nauru didn't have much success, and that's why they launched a limited time offer until June 30th with a reduced price that made it slightly more competitive, but still inferior to São Tomé in my opinion. The minimum donation required in Nauru is also $90,000 like in São Tomé, but with all the government fees, it tends to be more expensive than São Tomé. The process is slower and much more complex. In 2026, we are expecting new countries to launch citizenship by investment programs. One of the most popular ones and talked about is Argentina. We have been in touch, I have personally been in touch with the administration there, and we know a citizenship by investment program is coming. We expect it in late 2026, but we don't know how long they are going to take to implement it. They have to define the minimum investment, type of investment, and other requirements, but if it launches with the right conditions, it will probably be one of the most attractive citizenship programs in the market. Besides citizenship by investment programs, there are other countries that also sell their passports in different ways. One is citizenship by exception, where there's no predetermined amount in the law, as with these countries that we just discussed, or citizenship by descent, where you can get it if you have some ancestry from the country. So it is good to explore those options as well, because in some cases there might be a better fit, a better way for you to build a passport portfolio without necessarily going through citizenship by investment programs. So if you are interested in discussing which is the best option, the best country for you and your family to get a second passport in 2026, I would be happy to personally help you. At CitizenX, we help high net worth individuals like yourself to find the right passport portfolio and execute on it.